What's more important than the racers at Ascot? Hats, of course. Since Queen Anne founded Ascot in 1711, fashion has been as central as the racing. By the 19th century, Prince Regent, who was later George IV, Beau Brummel, set the tone with strict dress codes, and hats became the crown jewel of women's style. In the royal enclosure today, fascinators are banned. Only hats with a 4-inch base make the cut. From wide-brimmed classics to outrageous sculptural designs, Ascot has turned millinery into theatre, where choosing your hat is as important as picking the winner on Ladies' Day. Watch the hats pick up your faves as we welcome you to Kaleidoscope with Savithri Rodrigo this week. From the Kaleidoscope studios, Professor Dileni Gunewardena, Dr. Asha de Vos, the week in headlines in news in a blink.
They are the largest fish in the ocean, right? So they're not whales, but they're actually from the fish family. Very cool. They cruise through our oceans, consuming 8 kilos of dairy milk chocolate calories per day. I mean, if you think about it, they're basically the Labradors of the ocean. Very food oriented. They travel vast distances over our oceans. And so really documenting them in Sri Lanka is documenting a part of their story, because they are not only living in our country, they live in waters across our oceans.
And every spot on a whale shark is absolutely unique to each one. That was the enthusiastic description of whale sharks by Dr. Asha de Vos when this incredible fish was immortalized recently by Colombo Jewelry Stores in a limited edition sterling silver pendant. This pendant adds to previous CJS ocean-themed collections, where all sales proceeds continue to fund the extraordinary and very important research Asha and her team are doing in marine conservation.
The partnership with CJS is really, really important because it enables us to actually get out to sea year on year and collect valuable data that actually no one else in the country has. It's long-term data sets on all these amazing species that live out on off our coastlines. Truly valuable because it allows us to tell stories about who lives there, how long they're there, where they live, and just over years how things might change. And that's important for us to monitor as we have mounting threats in our oceans as well.
Across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Kaleidoscope delivers stories that matter. Connect, subscribe, and stay tuned. Every week, Kaleidoscope runs on the strength of SriLanka Live, CDB, and the Daily Morning, partners who fuel these journeys.
Cool appetizer. Introducing CDB Self, the digital wallet that makes life easy.
And here are the past week's igniting headlines on CDB News in a blink. Sri Lanka's overall inflation rate increases to 5.4% year-on-year in May from April's 4.7%. Sri Lanka's listed company earnings contract for the third consecutive quarter by 11.4% year-on-year in the March quarter. Plans are underway to implement a single standardized preschool education system across all 9 provinces by 2027. And now, our weekly snapshot on how our markets have performed. At the Colombo Stock Exchange, daily turnover dropped and foreign interest dwindled, leading the all share price index down to 22,240 points. Sri Lankans heaved a sigh of relief as WTI oil prices dropped to $72.50 per barrel as more oil tankers stranded in the Gulf are set to move out of the Strait of Hormuz. From its recent record peak of $5,417 an ounce, gold has now dropped by around 24% and is close to $4,080 per ounce. Lionel Messi becomes the all-time leading goal scorer in men's FIFA World Cup history. The UNFAO finds that global meat supply has quadrupled over the past 6 decades.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. SriLanka Life.
In Sri Lanka today, fewer than 3 in 10 women are part of the labor force, compared to 2/3 of men. This gap is not just a statistic. It is a story of untapped potential, of households balancing survival, and of an economy missing half its strength. On Kaleidoscope SriLanka Life Dialogues this week is Professor Dileni Gunewardena, Chair, Professor of Economics at the University of Peradeniya, Research Fellow with the Partnership for Economic Policy, and author of a study on female labour force participation conducted for the ADB. So, how much of women's economic contribution is actually hidden, informal, or unpaid work?
What we're not thinking enough about is the fact that unpaid work is also work. And, in 2017, DCS did a time use survey, which sort of calculated how much women were engaged in unpaid work. The average woman spent 4.1 hours a day more than men on unpaid work. So that's cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care, the whole works. And if you actually calculate how much that works out per year, and then, you divide it, the number of hours by a working day, because, if you consider it a job, you actually find that it works out to 187 working days per year, which is something like 8.5 months. So you can understand why female labor force participation is low, because women already had a full-time, almost full-time unpaid job.
Do you think cultural expectations, also the lack of childcare infrastructure and elder care infrastructure, are these kind of the biggest obstacles that prevent women getting into the labor force?
Childcare is the largest measurable determinant of female labor force participation. If you have, for example, a child under 6, your female likelihood of entering the labor force is going to reduce by 54 to 60%. Apart from the time use survey of 2017, we really don't have much information as to what's keeping them out of the labor force when it comes to care.
So youth unemployment hovering about around 20%. How does this intersect with gender, especially for young women wanting to join the labor force?
So youth unemployment is really quite high for women for similar reasons. There are women who are coming out of school. They're waiting for good jobs. And because they don't have any experience and so on, they're not likely to get a job immediately. Because they don't take just any job, they're going to be unemployed.
What's the impact that the pandemic had on women?
So because of the types of jobs that women are in, especially the export sector, global shifts impact them quite a bit. And we've seen, not just the pandemic, but the economic crisis after that, globally, sort of things that happened in 2024, exports shrank, female employment shrank. And in 2025, we've seen a pickup, but that's again because in the first part of 2025, there was a pickup in the global economy. So they are quite susceptible to global changes.
So if female participation tends to stagnate the way it is, what long-term consequences is Sri Lanka going to see from the point of growth and also social resilience?
We've got to think about women the way we think about men, which is not to forget that, the gendered aspect of it. but to essentially think, okay, I want women in my workforce. What's preventing them from being there in my workforce? And how can I either provide it or how can I lobby government to provide it for me? So I think employers have to think that way. And I think childcare infrastructure is actually, it's not a private household matter. It's social infrastructure, just like electricity and roads and bridges. It's infrastructure. And if we don't lay that infrastructure, we are going to be in for a big shock.
And that's a wrap. Kaleidoscope returns next week with more stories that matter.